For centuries, the Roman Empire has grown and became the greatest power in the ancient world. Their legions have conquered land in every corner, from the hot deserts of Egypt to the cold forests of northern Europe. Rome dominated integers, defeated powerful armies, and built cities that exist to this day. But among so many places conquered, there is a territory that was never part of the Roman plans, the lands we know today as Russia. If the Romans were able to defeat great empires and control immense lands, why did they never try to advance to the east? Didn't they just interested themselves? Or did they know that this achievement would be impossible? Stay here in the video. In it, we will explore the true reasons that prevented the Romans from marching towards the east and understanding why this was a war that never happened. To understand this question, the first point to consider is the temporal factor. The Roman Empire has reached its peak between the 1st centuries BC and 2 AD, dominating much of the world known at that time. However, the concept of a unified Russia was very far from existing. Moscow, the city that would later become the heart of the Russian Empire, had not even been founded. His first historical mention only appears in the 12th century, when Rome was already just a memory of the past. The Romans, by expanding their domains, had a preference for gaining regions that already had a significant level of urban and economic development. People like the Egyptians, Greeks, and Carthaginians had well-structured cities, advanced administrative systems, and commercial networks that could be easily absorbed by the Roman system. This strategy facilitated cultural assimilation and the administration of the conquered territories. However, the region that today corresponds to Russia was very far from this pattern. The northernmost areas were dominated by nomadic tribes, such as the Quotes, Sarmats, and the first Slavic groups. These populations lived in a decentralized way, without fortified cities or complex administrative centers that could be captured by the Romans. For an empire based on the domination of urban centers and the use of existing infrastructure, this region offered nothing that justified the military effort of a prolonged campaign. Even though the Romans had tried to advance toward what we call Russia today, they would not have found an empire or organized kingdom to subdue. Unlike Carthage, Egypt, or Greece, where Rome assimilated well-established political structures, the region that would become Russia was a mosaic of scattered peoples. Without a capital to be taken, without a central administration to be dominated, the achievement would become an even greater challenge. In addition, Russian territory was not economically attractive to Roman standards. The empire has always had a special interest in fertile lands, regions rich in ores, strategic ports, and well-established shopping centers. The achievements in Egypt ensured essential wheat supplies, while the domination of the Iberian Peninsula brought great riches in gold and silver. Gaul and Britannia offered ideal land for agriculture and metal exploration. On the other hand, what could the Romans find in Russia? Dense forests, cold steppes, strict winters, and such vast and dispersed territory that it would be almost impossible to manage efficiently. The logistical difficulties in maintaining armies and supplying garrisons would be immense, making occupation of the region an extremely costly effort for little return. Another great reason that disrupted the Romans was the lack of knowledge about the land to the east. The Roman maps of the time simply do not precisely cover these regions. The geographical knowledge of the empire was impressive to the standards of antiquity, but it was limited to areas that had direct contact with the Roman world. The provinces conquered, the commercial routes, and the military borders were well documented. But the farther a territory was from the Roman influence, the more scarce the information about him. And in the case of Russia, the information was practically non-existent. In addition, the nature of Roman geographical knowledge was based on reports from traders, diplomats, and soldiers. For a region to be considered worthy of conquest, it was necessary to have concrete information about its economic potential and its strategic importance. Egypt, for example, was known for its agricultural wealth even before it was attached to the empire. The Iberian Peninsula and Gaul were famous for its reserves of precious metals and fertile lands. But what about Russia? The few reports on the lands to the east came from merchants who occasionally crossed the steppes or negotiated with local tribes. However, this information was vague, inaccurate, and did not provide a clear view of what could be found there. For such a pragmatic empire as Rome, it made no sense to invest troops, resources, and logistics to explore unknown territory without guarantee that something valuable could be extracted from it. Another factor that made any military planning difficult was the absence of safe and structured routes for a possible campaign. The Romans depended on their well-paved roads to move armies and supplies efficiently. In their achievements, they generally advanced by well-established sea or terrestrial routes, taking advantage of the existing infrastructure or building new roads as they advanced. However, in the Russian region of the time, there were no Roman roads, not even well-defined commercial routes that could be used to supply legions. Even though the Romans had ignored all the logistical difficulties and the absence of information about the territory, they would still have to deal with an extremely difficult enemy to defeat: the nomadic warriors of the steppes. The war against highly mobile armies has always been a challenge for Roman legions, which depended on organized formations, rigid discipline, and combat on controlled land. However, the peoples who inhabited the vast plains of Russia, such as the Scythians, Sarmatians, and Alans, dominated a very different war style based on speed, distance attack, and guerrilla tactics. The Romans were used to facing conventional armies, composed of infantry and cavalry that clustered in static formations. However, in the Eurasia steppes, the enemies Rome would face were completely different. People like the Scythians and the Saws were masters of horse war, using mounted archers who could quickly attack and retreat before the enemy had time to react. This style of combat was extremely difficult to neutralize, as Roman legions depended on their cohesive formation and melee combat to maximize their effectiveness. Moreover, even if the Romans were able to win a battle, the steppe warriors would simply retreat into the territory, reorganizing themselves quickly and launching new attacks. Unlike the conventional armies Rome faced in the Mediterranean, these peoples did not depend on cities, fortresses, or administrative centers to support themselves. They lived nomadically, constantly moving and avoiding direct combat whenever necessary. This meant that the Romans could even gain some temporary positions, but they could never completely subdue these peoples. Thus, even at the height of its power, the Roman Empire has never had reason to invade the region we know today as Russia. Despite his military strength and expansion ability, Rome has always followed a pragmatic strategy by gaining new territories. And when analyzing the factors involved, it is clear that an invasion of the East was never part of the empire's plans. The colossal distance and logistics challenges made the campaign extremely difficult to get there, and even if it succeeded on arrival, maintaining control over such a vast and wild territory would require an effort that even the Roman war machine could not sustain. In the end, Rome made the right choice by focusing his efforts on more strategic and profitable regions. The empire preferred to expand to areas that offered immediate return, such as Egypt, Gaul, and Hispania, where there were riches to be explored and infrastructure that facilitated management. But now is the question: if Rome had tried this achievement, would it have been able to tame the cold lands of the East? or the Russian winter, which has already defeated Napoleon and Hitler, would also have been the biggest enemy of the legions? Leave your opinion in the comments. Do not forget to leave the like and subscribe to the channel so as not to lose any video. Click on the screen to know why has no one ever copied the Roman army, and learn more about this fascinating empire.